And we are tracking tonight, among other stories, our lead story is the largest law enforcement scandal to hit the Republican Party's new House Speaker, Mike Johnson. And I'm going to say it very directly. You know, when we do the news around here, we try to start with the direct, simple, clear facts. The new Republican Speaker is taking a hard public stance against police. Full stop, period. The new Speaker admitting that he wants to hide evidence from the Justice Department in its pursuit of trespassers, rioters, and insurrectionists who attacked police and stormed the Capitol, of course, Speaker Johnson's workplace, on January 6th. This is new. You may say, oh, Jan 6 back in the news again. Well, this is the current Republican Speaker who is saying and doing things and using his power on this issue. That's why it's the news tonight. And you're about to see exactly what the new Republican Speaker said. But I'll tell you up front, for context, it is rare to hear a high government official take such an anti-police stance, to admit in public his intent. What he says is his intent, his motivation, his goal to hide evidence of possibly alleged crimes, depending on which people you're about to see, but to hide the evidence of these anti-police crimes from the DOJ itself. That's what Johnson is doing. And the reason he's making these remarks is his effort to continue the past Speaker's project, what Kevin McCarthy and Tucker Carlson and others had cooked up, which was the idea that if they released enough random extra videos from January 6th, it might somehow, some way feed conspiracy theories or attempts to minimize what is now a convicted sedition that occurred that day. Here is how Johnson explained why they're trying to hide the faces on video of those potential defendants.
For being here today, I think Prime Minister Netanyahu probably said it the best. This truly is a battle between good versus evil, light versus darkness, civilization versus barbarism. And the idea that this is happening on college campuses, university campuses across this land is unconscionable to us. This anti-Semitism has become all too common. It's turning to violence in some of these places. And the idea that university administrators would not speak out, would not take care of this problem is just beyond comprehension. You heard the harrowing tales of these students. We're going through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems.
We don't want the people on the January 6th videotapes to be charged by the DOJ. We're going to blur the faces, the Speaker says, of the people on those Jan 6 tapes so they don't get charged for what would be their crimes. Now, the beginning of that quote, as you saw there, was the Speaker making some other remarks that day, and then this is the news he made. Speaker Johnson referencing interfering with potential criminal investigations by a federal law enforcement agency and vowing to use his power and his access to what is potential evidence to hide those would-be fugitives. Now, how do you know this scandal tonight is already hurting Johnson, a conservative Trump ally who's gone out of his way to emphasize what would be this potential interference with an open DOJ probe? Well, in typical Washington fashion, we already have an update to the story, which is, after making that statement that I just showed you, Johnson aides are now trying to minimize what he said. They're admitting, in a way, that the words were political pandering because the DOJ does already have those tapes. They've been trying and convicting those trespassers and seditionists for years now. So Johnson's team is now saying, quote, the Department of Justice already has access to raw footage from January 6th, end quote, meaning that what he said, don't really take it seriously, or he wouldn't really interfere with the blurring, wouldn't be to interfere with the DOJ. But let me be clear, that statement goes to the prosecutor's evidence. They have the raw tapes, not to Speaker Johnson's apparently anti-police motive, that he would hide fugitives, which is what he said.
We're going through a methodical process of releasing them as quickly as we can. As you know, we have to blur some of the faces of persons who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and to be charged by the DOJ and to have other concerns and problems.
Those people broke into the Capitol, attacked police. Many officers, several officers, as you know, were brutally attacked. Some later died by suicide in the days after. And Johnson says quite blithely, quite passively, we don't want them to be charged for attacking police or storming the Capitol. We don't want to help the investigation. Indeed, blurring it as if he would hide it from the DOJ, which, again, to be as fair and precise as possible, his office is now walking back that part. And we've all seen police trying to fend off that mob of rioters. That's why there were so many crimes charged. Some are already serving jail time. But now the House Speaker says he doesn't want them charged by DOJ, likening that potential justice process to what he calls, quote, retaliation. You can imagine the many different responses to this. One Boston Globe columnist noting law and order, not for these guys. Blue lives only mattered when they were policing black ones. Apparently, blue lives also don't matter if it's just Trump people doing the attacking. When we turn to the January 6th committee leader who actually led the House probe into those crimes and who, Nicole and I were just discussing this earlier, Liz Cheney took a very different approach than Speaker Mike Johnson, who is out there now saying he basically doesn't want the people who broke into his own workplace to face any justice. This is the next level of thuggery coming out of the House Speaker's office. Cheney is a contrast, and she is saying this.
Mike Johnson has continued to claim that he's for transparency, that he's releasing the videos from that day. He ought to release them. He is suggesting, every day that goes by, this suggestion that somehow he's going to release something that will change what happened that day, that will change the facts. And there is nothing that will change that violent assault. So I call on him to release them. Do it now.
Cheney, who knows all about these issues from, of course, the Jan 6 committee, basically saying she calls his bluff, that this is about propaganda. They don't want to catch the dog. The dog doesn't want to catch the car, right? The car is just all the evidence, and they want to act like there's some secret thing that's later going to drop out of the sky and somehow undercut what happened. In her book, she writes about the surprise at Johnson's conduct to overturn the election, that he was susceptible to flattery from Trump. When I confronted him with flaws in his legal arguments, Johnson would concede or say, well, we just need to do this one last thing for Trump. She also says that he misled Republicans with bait and switch arguments to get them to sign on to one of those briefs. The former Congresswoman also warning that a Trump second term would be worse with someone like this current House Speaker.
If Donald Trump is elected again, we really don't have to worry because the institutions of our government will prevent, the worst that he will attempt to do. That nothing could be further from the truth, because those Republicans, a House with Republicans like Mike Johnson, a Senate with people like Josh Hawley and Mike Lee, they won't stand up to him.
They won't stand up to him. Far worse, Mr. Johnson, who used to criticize Trump before he came into office, is doing exactly the type of things that the old Mr. Johnson would have opposed, giving in to demagoguery, lying, abusing government power. And in this case today, if you take his office's walkback statement at their word, their best version of a defense is, don't believe what the Republican speaker says, doesn't really matter, wasn't really trying to hide evidence from DOJ, because what he says is just for political pandering purposes. Of course, the deeper and important question, which commingles with exactly Liz Cheney's warning, is why does Mike Johnson think it's in his interest, politically and otherwise, to blatantly oppose justice for people attacking police, including the Capitol Police that protect him to this day?
There are more people, Republicans, Democrats, independents, who we have to make sure they understand he's not a choice. He's not an option. He's not fit for this office. And I think that those are the people who are listening. Those are people we have to mobilize and motivate to stand against the danger that he presents. Donald Trump is not an acceptable alternative. He is not the lesser of two evils. He is a completely unfit man for office. He's already shown us what he would do, and he can never be near the Oval Office again.
New warnings from Liz Cheney. I'm joined by Che Komanduri, Obama campaign veteran. Che, when you look at both Liz Cheney's warnings and what you see coming out of the mouth of the House Speaker, which we just emphasized as our top story, he wants to be seen as hiding these fugitives, interfering with the DOJ, whether or not he actually has that evidentiary power. What does that tell us, and how seriously do you take Liz Cheney's warning?
I think we should take it very seriously. Look, Ari, by all appearances, our country is in the midst of a mass movement that could be anywhere upwards of 40% to install a full-throated dictator into the Oval Office. Donald Trump is an authoritarian, and he doesn't hide it. He talks about it on a daily basis. He discusses his authoritarian impulses and ideas and strategies out in the open. Nothing is being hidden. Everything is fully there for the American people to see, and it is important for the media to make this the central issue of the 2024 campaign. It is important for Democrats to make this the central issue of the 2024 campaign.